Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. The fit today is Venom. Let's take a look at a video.
I'm here now to debunk Christianity in less than a minute. And to do so,
good luck with that.
All right, let's see it.
Jesus teaches in the Gospel of John that the only true God is the Father. If the only true God is the Father, then Jesus cannot be God. Therefore, Jesus debunks Christianity in less than a minute.
So this creator does raise an important point. Jesus refers to the Father, the person of the Father, as coterminous, as isometric with the only true God, and then distinguishes Jesus Christ as the one the Father has sent. Now, in the first century CE, ousia and hypostasis were being used as synonyms, so we do not yet have this notion of multiple persons subsumed within the one substance of God. That's something that wouldn't happen until the 4th century, and even at Nicaea, they don't actually clearly distinguish hypostasis from ousia. In fact, they use them as synonyms. It's not till Basil of Caesarea, a couple of decades later, that this becomes clarified, and we have this decoupling of the ousia and the hypostasis, and we have this technical use of these two concepts as distinct so that we can subordinate the hypostasis to the ousia so that we can have one substance of God comprising three persons. That's not a possibility in John. That's nowhere articulated anywhere near John. And so to say Jesus is a different person from the Father within that same one true God is not a plausible reconstruction of the sense of John 17:3. Jesus is explicitly distinguishing himself from the one true God, from the ousia as well as the hypostasis of the one true God, at least based on the available data. The only alternative is to insist that the concepts that were later developed and later decoupled and later formalized as technical terminology existed in the 1st century CE. And there's absolutely no data that support that.
This happens a lot, especially in the online world, where critics of the Trinity don't understand the doctrine of the Trinity.
What also happens is that defenders of the Trinity don't understand the critics of the Trinity.
Jesus does in fact say this, at least say that the Father is the only true God. But what does this prove? This proves that Jesus is not a different God than the Father. This is the nature of the doctrine of the Trinity that many people don't understand. We're not saying Jesus is a separate God, but Jesus is the only God. We're saying that there's one God in three persons, not that there are three gods. So I'd like to thank Hamzas Den for pointing out why Jesus is not a different God, but is in fact the only true God.
So this entirely ignores or entirely misunderstands the original creator's argument just to contradict it, because Mike cannot help but beg the question here. Because this creator's argument was pretty simple. It is that in John 17:3, Jesus distinguishes himself from the only true God, indicating Jesus is not the only true God. And in that text, Jesus identifies the Father with the only true God, isometrically. They are coterminous, they are coextensive. We do not yet have this notion of multiple hypostases within a single ousia. That's something that would be innovated in the centuries that followed. So the Trinity is not even in view. All this creator is arguing is that Jesus indicates in John 17:3 that he is not the only true God. Mike does not seem capable of engaging this creator on their own terms, much less the argument. And so Mike says, well, wait a minute, the Trinity doesn't mean that Jesus is a separate God. The creator never argued that Jesus was a separate God. The creator never argued that John 17:3 was Trinitarian. The creator never argued that the Trinity means that Jesus is a separate God. None of those things are a part of the creator's argument. Mike must impose them because Mike cannot do anything other than presuppose that John 17:3 is the Trinity, and it sounds like the only thing that makes sense to him is that this creator must misunderstand the Trinity. It certainly does not prove that Jesus is the one true God, since the creator's entire argument is, hey, look, in John 17:3, Jesus distinguishes himself from the only true God. The only way we get from the argument, hey look, John 17:3 says Jesus is not the only true God, to therefore Jesus is the only true God, is if you are entirely ignoring what the text says and just slapping the Trinity on it because there's no other option, which is what Mike seems to be doing. He doesn't understand the argument. He doesn't engage the argument. All he does is assert an entirely irrelevant, different argument and then crow that Creator has proven the Trinity. And that's just laughably misguided.